My name is Kat, and for months I had been deliberately watching Ken as he worked inside my apartment, inventing tiny excuses to bring him back again and again just so I could keep him close. The precise, confident way his hands moved, the way his strong forearms flexed and rippled beneath his rolled-up sleeves while he repaired things, completely captivated me. What had begun as simple, polite conversations during his visits gradually deepened into something far more intimate with every single return. My ex never really heard me, I confessed one evening, sitting perched on my kitchen counter as Ken fitted new handles onto the cabinets. There was a comforting safety in opening up to him while his attention stayed focused on the task, sparing me from having to look straight into those piercing blue eyes. But you actually listen. He stopped working right then, placed his screwdriver down carefully and turned fully toward me. The kitchen suddenly felt much smaller, filled with a crackling electric tension as he stepped closer. My heart pounded fiercely against my ribs when he positioned himself between my dangling legs, his rough, work-worn palms coming to rest on the counter on either side of my hips. "I hear everything you say, Kat," he murmured softly, his warm breath brushing across my lips. Every word. When his mouth finally met mine, the kiss was exquisitely gentle at first, a feather-light touch that sent shivers trembling through my entire body. His lips felt softer than anything I had imagined during all those lonely nights, yet there was nothing gentle about the way his solid body pressed forward, holding me firmly in place. He carried the faint taste of coffee mixed with something distinctly, irresistibly Ken, a flavor I had been unknowingly craving for so long. His stubble grazed deliciously against my skin as he tilted his head, carefully drawing my lower lip between his teeth with tender precision. All the months of pent-up tension seemed to ignite and crystallize in that single moment, especially in how his calloused hand cradled my jaw as though I were something precious, as if he had been longing for this connection just as much as I had. The kiss slowly intensified, shifting from sweet tenderness to deepening hunger as our lips moved together in perfect sync. This was the pivotal moment we had been building toward for so long. To understand how it all started, let me take you back a few months to when I first came to know Ken. I first spotted the crack in the wall on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't immediately striking, just a subtle faint line running from the corner of the living room window all the way down to the baseboard. But once my eyes caught it, I couldn't stop noticing it. It stood out like an old scar against the faded cream-colored paint, almost mocking me. I remember standing there barefoot on the cold hardwood floor, a coffee mug growing lukewarm in my hand. Outside, the wind pushed hard against the window panes, rattling them noisily in their frames. Winter was arriving, and with it came a vague, unnamed feeling inside me. A restlessness perhaps, or a quiet dread. Something fragile and brittle, poised to break apart just like that wall. I should have reached out for help sooner, but everyday life has a habit of pushing small issues aside under the weight of larger ones. There were bills to pay, work deadlines looming, and the lingering hollowness from a breakup that had ended more than 6 months earlier. The house wasn't meant to feel this empty. I wasn't supposed to feel this empty either. I finally gave in when the crack noticeably widened a week later. It now ran jagged and sharp, as though the house itself had inhaled deeply and chosen to split apart. I could no longer pretend it wasn't there. During lunch, my coworker Julie slid a bright yellow post-it note across the table toward me. On it was a name and a phone number. "Ken's the best," she said, chewing thoughtfully on the end of her pen. "Reliable, and he doesn't overcharge." "Thanks," I replied, though I paused hesitantly before slipping the note into my purse. That same night, I stared at the number for a long time, unsure exactly why contacting a handyman felt like such a significant step. Maybe it was because I disliked admitting I needed assistance. Or perhaps because inviting someone into my personal space in my current chaos felt far too intimate. But the crack refused to repair itself, so I dialed the number before I could second-guess myself any further. His voice was deeper than I had anticipated, calm and steady. "Ken speaking." I described the issue in the vaguest possible terms, fumbling awkwardly over phrases like structural damage and foundation concerns. He didn't hurry me along. Instead, he listened patiently, asked a few clarifying questions and offered to stop by the following day. When he arrived, I almost hesitated to let him inside. He was taller than I had imagined, possessing broad shoulders and hands that clearly belonged to someone who had spent years building and repairing. There was a quiet confidence radiating from him that made me instinctively want to stand taller and quickly check my reflection. Instead, I simply opened the door wider and moved aside. "This the problem?" he asked, nodding toward the crack. His voice held the same grounded quality from our phone call, but hearing it in person added even more weight and presence, as though it could effortlessly fill any room. "Yeah," I answered, suddenly self-conscious about how cluttered the living room appeared. A tall stack of magazines wobbled precariously on the coffee table. Blankets lay messily across the couch. The house had been intended as a fresh beginning, yet I hadn't done much to truly make it feel that way. Ken set his toolbox down and knelt in front of the crack, tracing its length with his fingers. His touch was deliberate and almost gentle, reminding me of a doctor carefully examining an injury. "It's not just cosmetic," he concluded after a moment. "Might be something deeper. Could be settling, but we'll need to check the foundation to be sure." His assessment struck me harder than expected. I felt my stomach drop. "That sounds expensive." "It might be." He looked up at me then, and his eyes held a reassuring steadiness. "But it's fixable." For reasons I couldn't fully explain, those words comforted me deeply. Fixable. It felt like an unexpected lifeline I hadn't realized I needed. Ken spent the following hour thoroughly inspecting the rest of the house. I stayed nearby, asking questions and trying not to sound entirely uninformed. He answered each one patiently without any condescension, and by the time he gathered his tools to leave, I already felt a growing sense of trust in him. He provided me with a list of recommendations and a preliminary estimate. "Think it over," he suggested. "I can start whenever you're ready." "Thanks," I said, feeling noticeably lighter, as though the crack in the wall might not be the only thing capable of being repaired. After he departed, the house seemed even quieter than usual. I stood in the living room gazing at the crack and realized I was already anticipating Ken's next visit. The next time he returned, it was quite early. Too early for me to have prepared properly. My hair was still messy and I hadn't showered when I opened the door. "Morning," he greeted, holding up a cup of coffee like a thoughtful peace offering. I blinked at him in surprise. "Is that for me?" He gave a small smirk. "Figured you might need it." I couldn't help laughing, and for the first time in what felt like ages, the sound didn't feel forced at all. As he worked, I found myself lingering in the area, pretending to be occupied while actually observing him closely. There was something soothing about his movements, efficient yet unhurried, that helped me relax. He spoke sparingly unless I posed questions, but his responses were always thoughtful, showing he had genuinely considered them. "So, how long have you been doing this?" I asked, sitting cross-legged on the couch. He glanced up, wiping dust from his hands. "Since I was 16. My dad was a contractor, taught me everything I know." "Do you like it?" "Most days." He smiled briefly then, a quick warm flash that stirred something fluttering inside my chest. "I like fixing things, making them whole again." I reflected on those words long after he had gone, pondering what it meant to repair and restore wholeness, and how for the first time in ages, I didn't feel quite so broken. By the end of that week, Ken had transformed from merely a handyman into a steady, comforting presence in my life. Dependable, familiar, and safe enough to open up to. Our conversations expanded as he continued working, beginning lightly but growing more meaningful with each passing day. I shared details about the breakup that had left me reeling, explaining how I had purchased the house hoping it would serve as a distraction and a project to channel my energy into. Instead, it had become a constant reminder of how much I still had to learn. About homes, relationships, and myself. And Ken truly listened. He offered no unsolicited advice or empty cliches. He simply listened. And somehow that was precisely what I needed. One night after he had left, I ran my fingers gently along the crack in the wall. It was smaller now, having been patched and smoothed, yet I knew it remained beneath the surface, much like the hidden fractures within me. But perhaps, I considered, those cracks didn't signify total brokenness. Maybe they simply proved that something had endured a storm and survived. And maybe, just maybe, they could indeed be mended. Ken returned 2 days later, arriving early enough that I had barely managed to compose myself. I had spent the morning nervously pacing and tidying the living room, even though it was already neat. When his knock finally sounded, my pulse quickened sharply, and I had to draw a deep breath before answering the door. He stood there with his tool bag over his shoulder, the collar of his flannel shirt slightly crooked. His hair looked damp from the rain, and he carried the earthy, grounding scent of sawdust and fresh outdoors. It hit me unexpectedly, that scent, raw and centering, the kind that stays with you long after the person leaves. "Morning," he said, and his deep, even voice somehow steadied me. "Ready to tackle this?" I stepped aside to let him enter. "Yeah, more than ready." As Ken prepared his tools, I observed him even more attentively this time. The strong, purposeful movements of his hands, the prominent veins along his forearms, made it difficult to look away. He wore his confidence effortlessly like a natural second skin, and it intrigued me deeply. He looked up and caught me staring. "You okay?" "Fine," I replied quickly, feeling warmth rise in my cheeks. "Just wondering how bad it really is." He smiled again, that same brief flash of warmth. "We'll figure it out." As he continued working, I stayed close, pretending to organize papers on the coffee table. The truth was that I simply enjoyed his company there. His presence filled the empty spaces, making the house feel less lonely. He didn't speak excessively, but his words carried real substance, carefully considered. At one point he reached for a measuring tape and his arm lightly brushed against mine. The contact was fleeting, almost nothing, yet it sparked a warm flicker through me that lingered. "Do you do this kind of work often?" I asked after some time, seeking distraction. "Depends," he answered without glancing up. "Sometimes quick fixes. Other times bigger jobs. Houses like this usually come with a story though, and a few surprises." "Yeah. What's this one story, you think?" He paused, leaning back to study the crack. "I'd say it's seen better days, but it's still standing. Could use some care. Maybe a little patience." I swallowed hard. He wasn't speaking only about the house. I sensed it clearly. The weight of his words settled over me. For a moment I struggled to respond. Instead I knelt down beside him. "What do you think? Will it hold?" He looked at me directly then. Really looked. And something in his blue eyes made my breath catch. "Yeah," he said softly. "It'll hold." For the rest of that afternoon we worked together side by side. I passed him tools, wiped dust from the baseboards, and stole occasional glances when I thought he wouldn't notice. I observed details I hadn't seen before. The faint creases at the corners of his eyes when he smiled, the way his shirt stretched across his back as he reached upward to patch the plaster. He was meticulous and methodical. There was something profoundly intimate about watching him at work. It felt like he wasn't merely repairing the house but also gently mending parts of my life I hadn't even recognized as damaged. At one moment he leaned in close to demonstrate how to sand a rough section of plaster. His hand rested lightly over mine, guiding it in slow, careful circles. My pulse raced, but I didn't withdraw. Instead, I allowed myself to savor the warmth of his skin, the strength in his fingers, and the steady rhythm of his breathing beside me. "Like this," he instructed, his voice low and calm. For a brief time, it became difficult to concentrate on anything except the sound of it. By the time we wrapped up for the day, the light outside was beginning to fade. Ken gathered his tools but didn't depart immediately. He lingered in the doorway, one hand resting against the frame. "You did good today," he said. I laughed softly. "I didn't do much." "You were here," he replied, his voice low and steady. "That's enough." I didn't know how to respond, so I simply nodded, hoping he couldn't detect how rapidly my heart was beating. When he finally stepped out, the house grew quiet once more, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. This time it felt full of anticipation, as though something fundamental had shifted irreversibly. Every time I contacted Ken afterward, I made certain to wear those soft yoga pants that hugged my curves perfectly. I wasn't blatant about it, just subtle moments when I would reach for something on a high shelf, casually asking his thoughts on hanging a picture. The way his gaze would linger just a heartbeat longer let me know he noticed. Sometimes I would bring him iced tea while he worked, allowing our fingers to brush during the handoff. "You're a lifesaver," I'd say, leaning against the doorframe. "I don't know what I'd do without you." The loneliness in my tone wasn't completely pretended. My divorce had created a deep emptiness that his visits helped soothe. I started wearing my hair down after noticing how he watched once when I released it from its ponytail. The way his hands paused on the wrench, how his throat moved as he swallowed. I would run my fingers through it, stretching my neck slightly, pretending not to sense his attention. "Could you check the shower head again?" I'd ask, fully aware it functioned perfectly. "The pressure seems off." These were just pretexts to keep inviting him back, to have someone to talk with, someone who made me feel valued and seen. During our conversations, I would sit near enough to catch his scent, clean sweat mixed with sawdust and a spicy note that quickened my pulse. Sometimes I would touch his arm while laughing at his jokes, letting my hand rest there a moment longer than necessary. When I spoke about my ex and the loneliness that followed, I lowered my defenses entirely. I let him see the vulnerability shining in my eyes. I began baking on days I expected him, filling the apartment with warm aromas of cookies or banana bread. "You work so hard," I'd tell him, watching him enjoy each bite. "It's the least I can do." But truly, I adored seeing his face soften with pleasure. I loved being the source of that expression. These moments accumulated like delicate layers, soft touches, prolonged glances. The way he began inventing reasons to visit without my prompting, how he would arrive in his nicer jeans with hair still damp from showering. We were circling each other carefully, both hesitant to disrupt the fragile, beautiful thing developing between us. I was curled up on my kitchen floor that Tuesday night, my designer skirt wrinkled and mascara leaving dark trails down my cheeks, when I heard Ken's familiar knock. I had completely forgotten he was scheduled to check the disposal. For a second I considered ignoring it, but something inside me desperately needed his steady presence. "Jesus, Cat." He breathed the words when I opened the door, his toolbox dropping to the floor with a metallic clink. Without any hesitation, he guided me back into the kitchen and lowered himself to sit beside me on the cold tile. His warmth pressed comfortingly against my side, anchoring me. "I thought I was ready," I whispered, my voice hoarse, "to try dating again, to be normal." The fluorescent kitchen light hummed overhead as I picked nervously at my manicure, unable to meet his eyes. "Marcus from accounting. We had coffee twice." "Just coffee, but today..." My throat constricted around the words. Ken's shoulder shifted closer, offering silent support as I continued. I overheard them in the break room. He told everyone that I had thrown myself at him. That I was desperate for it since the divorce. Called me desperate. Fresh tears fell. "Fucking bastard," Ken muttered, and the protective anger in his tone made me shiver. The whispers had started right away. Karen from HR gave me a look blending pity and disgust. Like I was some pathetic divorced woman so starved for attention that I wrapped my arms tightly around myself. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am desperate. I keep finding excuses to call you over, wearing these outfits, hoping you'll notice me. Ken's hand found mine then, his calloused fingers intertwining with my shaky ones. "Stop," he said firmly. "You're not desperate. You're healing. There's a difference." "Am I?" I laughed with bitterness. Because some days it feels like I'm still that scared woman my ex left. The one he said was too needy, too emotional, too much of everything. The words spilled out, revealing secrets I had kept guarded. He used to tell me no one else would want to deal with my drama. That I was lucky he put up with me. "Your ex is a fucking idiot," Ken growled, his grip tightening reassuringly on my hand. "And so is Marcus. Men like that tear women down because they're too weak to handle someone strong." I turned to look at him then, moved by the intensity burning in his blue eyes. "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "I feel hollow. Like they all took pieces of me and I don't know how to get them back." "You're stronger than you know," he murmured. His free hand rose to gently brush away a tear. "I've watched you rebuild yourself piece by piece. The way you hold your head high at those neighborhood meetings, how you've made this place your own. That takes courage, Kat." We remained there for hours, my head eventually resting on his shoulder as I poured out everything. About my ex's gaslighting, about the panic attacks I still experienced occasionally, about the fatigue of pretending everything was fine at work. Ken listened attentively, interjecting quiet insights now and then that helped me view things in a new light. "You know what I see when I look at you?" he asked gently as the night deepened. "I see someone who keeps blooming despite the storm. Someone who makes me smile even when she's asking me to fix things that aren't really broken." Heat flooded my cheeks. "You knew." His low chuckle vibrated through me. "The shower head was working fine last week and the week before." His thumb traced soothing patterns on my palm. "But I kept coming back because seeing you was the best part of my day." When he finally stood to leave hours later, he helped me up as well. "Promise me something," he said, still holding my hand. "Don't let them dim your light. You're not desperate or needy. You're extraordinary. And anyone who makes you feel otherwise doesn't deserve your time." He pressed a tender kiss to my forehead before departing, and something profound shifted inside me. In his eyes, I saw a different reflection of myself, not as damaged or needy, but as someone deserving of patience, kindness, and love that didn't wound. That night altered everything between us. It transcended mere physical attraction. He had witnessed my darkest moments and chosen to stay. In his quiet strength, I rediscovered something I believed had vanished forever: hope. Staring at my monitor later, the quarterly reports blurred into meaningless figures. My thoughts kept drifting to Ken, recalling how his forearms had flexed when he worked on my cabinet the previous week. The way his t-shirt had ridden up slightly, revealing a glimpse of skin. I caught myself touching my lips, imagining his meticulous attention to detail and wondering how that care might feel in more personal ways. Ms. Reynolds. My assistant's voice pulled me back to reality. The Henderson file? Right, yes, I stammered, feeling warmth creep up my neck. All morning I had been like this, distracted and dreamy. I had already messaged him about an issue with my kitchen faucet. We both understood it was functioning perfectly. He had installed it just last month. But these small excuses had evolved into our special dance. During the budget meeting, I barely registered a single word. Instead, I pondered what to wear that evening. The soft cream sweater that slipped alluringly off one shoulder. Those leggings that made my legs appear endlessly long. I had noticed him staring once when I wore them, seeing his hand freeze momentarily on the wrench. By lunch, I had changed into the silk blouse I kept in my desk drawer, the one that made me feel confident and empowered. Karen from HR passed by with pursed lips in disapproval, but I held my spine straight. "You're extraordinary," Ken had told me that night on the kitchen floor. I clung to those words like armor. I reapplied my lipstick for the third time, checking my phone yet again. His message still caused my stomach to flutter. 6 p.m. Try not to flood the place before I get there. Such a straightforward text, yet it carried the depth of months of lingering looks and accidental brushes. The afternoon dragged slowly. I found myself mentally rehearsing different scenarios. How I would greet him at the door, how casually I might lead him to the kitchen. Perhaps I would reach high for something, letting my shirt lift just enough. When had I become someone who carefully planned moments just to earn his smile? By 4:30, concentration was impossible. I left work early, disregarding the whispers from Marcus's area of the office. Let them gossip. They knew nothing about the genuine, heartfelt conversations Ken and I shared about dreams, fears, healing, and feeling truly seen for the first time in years. At home, I tried on 3 different outfits before choosing the leggings and cream sweater. I released my hair, recalling how his eyes tracked the motion whenever I did so. The apartment was already spotless, but I still adjusted the throw pillows and the orchid on the counter. His suggestion that it brings life to the room. I lit my favorite vanilla candle. Catching my reflection in the hallway mirror, I noticed flushed cheeks and bright eyes. When had I begun looking so vibrantly alive again? The woman my ex had abandoned would never have possessed this quiet confidence or the thrilling anticipation humming beneath her skin. 6:05. No knock yet. I paced the kitchen, questioning whether I was imagining too much. Maybe to him this was simply work, just kindness extended to a lonely divorced woman. 6:10. The knock came. My heart leaped as I counted slowly to 3 before opening the door. There he stood in dusty work boots, that familiar half-smile playing on his lips. He had changed into the blue shirt that perfectly matched his eyes. He never wore that for ordinary jobs. "So," he said, stepping inside. His subtle yet intoxicating cologne enveloped me. "About that leak." The air between us hummed with possibility. As I guided him toward the kitchen, our usual easy banter felt entirely different now, electrically charged. His toolbox landed on the floor with a thud that mirrored my racing heartbeat. I hopped onto the counter in my usual spot during our talks, but this time every sensation felt intensified. The comfortable way he moved through my space, the light brush of his arm against my knee as he inspected the faucet we both knew was fine. "Seems fine to me," he murmured, turning to face me. Those blue eyes locked with mine, and all my prepared plans suddenly dissolved. Months of yearning, gentle flirting, and growing trust had culminated here. And when he stepped between my legs, his rough palms resting on either side of my hips, I understood this was no ordinary service call. This marked the start of everything. "You know," he said, his voice low and husky, "I think we both know there was never anything wrong with this faucet." His thumbs drew small circles on the counter, sending delightful shivers along my spine. I gazed down at him through my lashes, heart hammering. Maybe I just like having my handyman around. The word "my" lingered meaningfully in the air. Is that what I am? His eyes darkened with intensity as he drew nearer, his warmth heating my thighs. Just your handyman? The kitchen pulsed with electricity, alive with months of anticipation. Every shared glance and late-night talk had led directly to this. I reached out, my fingers tracing along the collar of his blue shirt. You tell me. His hand captured mine, pressing my palm against his chest so I could feel his heart beating as quickly as my own. I think, he murmured, we both know I'm more than that. The first kiss was soft, a tentative brush of lips testing and questioning. But when I sighed into his mouth, my fingers curling into his shirt, everything transformed. His hand slid into my hair, supporting my head as our lips met more fully. That night unfolded like a beautiful dream. We talked for hours on my couch, interspersing soft kisses with honest confessions. He revealed how he had fallen for me gradually, how witnessing my self-rebuilding had made him want to become part of my life story. I admitted that his visits had become the highlights of my weeks, how his quiet strength had guided me toward rediscovering my own. The moon rose high as we shared takeout and deeper truths. He described his ambitions to grow his contracting business, his eyes sparkling with excitement as he outlined his vision. When he finally left well past midnight, the house held on to our shared secrets. I slept that night with a peaceful smile, the sheets still carrying his scent. For the first time in years I felt entirely, profoundly whole. Not because he completed me, but because he helped me recognize I had always been complete. I simply needed someone to help me see it clearly. And in my dreams I revisited every detail. The way his eyes crinkled with his smile, how his hands felt tangled in my hair, the gentle words whispered between kisses. But mostly I dreamed of tomorrow and all the tomorrows beyond, knowing this was merely the start of our shared story. Mom, I met someone, I blurted into the phone one day, curled up in my new bay window while watching autumn leaves swirl across the overgrown garden. My mother's joyful gasp brought a smile to my face. Oh honey, tell me everything. Is it that handyman you keep mentioning? The knowing tone in her voice made me